Hello and welcome to another Revel Coach Plus with your hosts Allison Nissen and Marcy Stout, and we are with Revel Coach, and our mission is to encourage everyone to live their best life because it's better together, and that's why we are here with you today. We are so fortunate that Stephanie Licata is with us. She is the founder of Sound Change. And the mission of Sound Change is to dramatically increase the number of professionally self-expressed people on the planet. She does this through coaching, events, thought-provoking content, engaging with awesome human beings. She hates cookie cutters, don't we all? She believes smart and sound change is possible. Stephanie is also the director of coaching of the Ask Method company, helping coaches build their businesses online. Stephanie, thank you so much for stopping by. How are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you? I'm happy to be here.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Can I start with what is the Ask Company?
Sure. So the Ask
Company method.
The Ask Method company. Yes. So
there you go.
Method company is a digital marketing company that really has revolutionized how to build a business digitally, right? And they've done so by literally testing so many different strategies online, and then created a program based upon what they see works, right? So nothing is like based on opinion. It's like, oh, we're seeing this trend's working, so let's try now. So we work with coaches, consultants, course creators, physical product owners, people that want to scale their business online and go beyond their immediate circle, want to build a list, want to build a really a list that also shows you a little bit more about your audience, and wants to use your audience to help design and create your products and services too. So,
and I love it. So I do feel like since we're both in the coaching business and we interview a lot of entrepreneurs, growing your mailing list is something that everybody has it on their priority list and not quite figured out. So can you tell us a little bit more on how it works? And
sure. So at Ask, we actually, we do, the first step is we teach people really how to get great data from their market. So we really teach people how to do that by building a quiz funnel. And so we teach how to build a quiz funnel. And then we teach people, once you have those people there, how do you enroll them in what you're doing, right? So we teach people to different pathways into sales. And we teach people also how to build products that make sense to sell to that audience based upon the data they shared with you in the quiz funnel. So it's really all data-based decision-making. It's not going in a room for 6 months and trying to figure out the best product. It's really getting the information from the people that you're trying to serve rather than trying to figure it out yourself.
And then, and you coach their coaches. So if you have,
so I lead a team, an international team of 16 coaches, some of whom are marketing coaches, some of whom are accountability coaches, and they lead a group of these 500 individuals who are learning how to build their businesses online.
That's great. And how'd you get into this line? Like, how'd you get involved with Ask Method?
So, I mean, I've had a business since 2007. I've had a full-time business since 2013. So I started my coaching and consulting business part-time. And then honestly, I was working right before the pandemic. I was working mostly with hospitality segment. And I was traveling around to hotels and casinos and doing all this training and doing all this coaching. Then I was doing a lot of career change coaching. And sure enough, here comes like this pandemic that nobody knew what to expect. I literally went from, pulling in 5 figures a month to making 0 in about like 30 days. So I actually, to be sure, I got the PPP, like I had a business and I had literally no income. And I got recruited for this role at Ask through LinkedIn. I've gotten recruited several times for very lucrative opportunities through LinkedIn. So I have leveraged LinkedIn to the max and really made myself marketable on LinkedIn. And so for people like that kind of roll their eyes about LinkedIn when you get those happy birthday messages from people you have no clue about, I tolerate that for all the opportunities that I have gotten in the past decade. So yeah, so that's how that happened.
I would love to know like one tip for expanding my LinkedIn connections. I mean, it sounds like that you've really managed to make it work for you.
Yeah. So one of the things I have done to make myself marketable on LinkedIn is I am always cultivating recommendations. So I have over a decade of recommendations that really highlight. So you can put testimonials on your website, right? But usually they've given them to you and you've put them on there. A recommendation on LinkedIn holds more than a testimonial on a website because someone physically has to do it and tie their name to it and tie their profile to it. And so I really make clear to ask the right people to share a diverse amount of skill sets. So I've really spent, I think I have something like over 22, I think, recommendations that I have. And that really goes a long way. And I've had people who have recruited me actually say, wow, I was so impressed with how many recommendations you had. And the key to that is always making sure you talk to someone before you send them a recommendation through LinkedIn. I just had a coach roll off my team who was awesome. And she got another opportunity. And I said, hey, like, you know, we're going to miss you so much. I'm like, I would love if you could give me a LinkedIn recommendation. I was happy to do the same thing for you. And we just exchanged those recommendations. And it's just amazing to get people also fresh in the experience of working with you. And it was awesome. So you have to have that conversation first. Like, don't, like LinkedIn in messages, like somebody taught a course and gave someone a template and everyone's using the same template. And so I'm just like, oh, you must have taken that course too. So you know how much we ignore those messages. So you really have to make sure that you connect with those people personally before you ask for that recommendation.
And then do you have a balance of how often you post, or do you try to stay posting in a core theme of coaching, or kind of what's your style with your brand?
I have to say, I haven't done a ton of posting recently, but I will share when I'm doing a webinar, when my company's doing a webinar, when there's news to share. I used to do a lot more, I have to say, sharing in terms of creating content. I used to create a lot more content. But I haven't done as much. I have shared some relevant content, or I've shared opportunities. I've been hiring coaches at times, so I've shared those opportunities of being part of the team that I work with. So I used to create a lot more content because I think when you first become an entrepreneur, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to be this social media slave, and you start like writing blogs weekly and doing all this stuff. And having real meaningful connections with people, whether it's in person or Zoom or whatever conversations, I find are much better investments of my time than like constantly creating content. Yes, you have to have a content plan, but it cannot take all of your marketing energy. It has to be a piece of everything you do. So.
Absolutely. And one thing I love how you're sharing this information, because so many of our people that are watching this are coaches, and having the courage to make the ask is actually just as simple as making the ask. So I appreciate you kind of pushing and encouraging people to kind of step out of their comfort zone, because it is really important. It's a way to legitimize your profile and things like that. So before the show, we were talking about, you also do a lot of work, which is teaching coaches how to start a business. So whether it's being an entrepreneur or growing their practice, we would love to kind of hear a little bit more about your approach to building a business.
Yeah, no, so, when I started Sound Change and I was doing all this career coaching, I found that so many people were not just wanting to change careers, but wanting to start businesses. And I actually started my career in marketing back in the late 90s. I used Constant Contact in beta. So I had this big marketing background, and I used to write a lot, do a lot of marketing writing. And so I was like, what, I'm going to, start to sort of incorporate. I kind of very intuitively knew what to do when I became a coach marketing wise. I also, as part of my coaching certification at NYU, the first course I took was called Authentic Marketing for Coaches. And it really helped me understand the business of coaching. And the first thing I did is that right after the professor had the day one class, I walked up to them and I said, do you need a personal assistant? And I became her personal assistant, and I learned the back end of her business. And I got paid $25 an hour, like going to NYU, like I was working full time at the time, hadn't taken my business full time. So I was working at a job. And I just was like, I'm going to be this lady's personal assistant and be her VA. And I became the VA of a coach, and I learned the back end of everything. And that's how I learned that. And I just took really good notes. I have a very good memory. One of the things that I always teach coaches to do is to define what are the sources of how they want their business to come from them. Like if they are going to be completely terrified about building online, I will say, okay, just don't worry about that right now. Just like put that to the side. Let's talk about how you're going to do things organically. And then, yes, at some point, if you do want to go into that foray of building online, you absolutely can. And you can absolutely gain enormous value from that. And that's a lot of what happens with us. But I also help people identify at what also are the opportunities that they want to take and not take. So for example, when's the right time to be a contract coach for another company, right? How much time do you want to lend to that, right? And when is the time to go into coaching and go into training and development, right? To be honest, the revenue became a game changer when I went more into training and development, right? When I took sort of the coaching piece. And I, as I was going through my coaching certification and doing all that, I did decide to go and get a master's degree in organizational psychology. And that shifted everything for me and helped me see coaching at a whole other level and training at a whole other level and understand how to plug coaching into organizations. And the going into that world of training. So what's your mix, your product mix, right? What are the different ways you're going to make money, right? And every time I speak to a coach, I make them raise their right hand and I say, promise me you're not going to expect that everything is just going to be from one-on-one sessions, like that your whole thing is going to be from one-on-one sessions. Now, the way that works is if you're working in a really high-end executive coaching where people are charging $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 for one-on-one coaching and from an executive, absolutely, you can do that. But for most people earlier in their coaching business, it's like, I've worked with coaches who are literally tearing their hair out, going from one-on-one session to one-on-one session to one-on-one session, and it's just like killing their business. And so I really do make them sort of own that may not be the most sustainable way. So I kind of feel that a little bit.
Yeah, and for the clients that do that, like, is one of the shifts, like, what do you have I guess every personality is different, but I know like some people start making some money through like passive income of an online course. Some people do group coaching.
Yes.
Some people have like the subcontracted coaching. Talk through like the different pros and cons of those options.
So one of the pros of doing any kind of group, you have to just think about the math of it, right? You could be coaching 10 people one-on-one for 10 sessions, and that's 100 hours of delivery, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you sell 10 people, 10 hours each, that's 100 hours, right, of delivery. If you take those 10 people and you put them in a group program, but you add in a hybrid of giving them 2 to 3, one-on-one sessions, but you also add this group experience, right? You're working that 10 hours. Let's say you're doing 10 group hours, and then maybe you're working 3 times 10, that's 30. So maybe you're working 40 hours with the same group of people, providing the same level of value. Maybe you're adding a little bit email support, things like that. Right. And now you have this breadth and space to think about what's next, right? To think about what could I do at the next level, or to put together a marketing plan for maybe a training product. Like you have this innovative time. When you rob yourself of innovation time by only doing delivery, right? That's when your business is hard to grow, right? Because then you're like, I can't get this up. I can't get this up. I have to keep doing this. I have to keep doing this. That's when you get stuck and start to become this coaching robot, right? So it's really important that you build in innovation time and that you seek things that are low investment of time, high return, right? High return in revenue, right? So what I always say, there's 3 categories. There's one-on-one coaching is high investment, low return. Consulting, maybe, doing a little bit more sort of higher level coaching can kind of be flat, right? It's a flat return. It's an even exchange. When you're doing group coaching or training where you can charge, a premium for a training program, that's a low investment, high return. So you want to stay on that right side. It's okay. I always still had like 20% of my time in the low investment, high return. I always stayed related to the client by, it's kind of like when you're a principal, you want to stay related to the student, right? I never took myself out of the classroom. I always stayed doing one-on-one coaching, but I always made sure I had like 20% on the left, maybe like 30% in the middle, that flat, and always 50%. You want to aim for 50% of what you do, your time, to be in that low investment, high return area.
So we interviewed a training company. This was a few months, like 6 months ago or so. And what she was saying in our interview, the biggest stress is like butts and seats. So if you're going to do one of those, staying on the right side and trying to get groups, do you use the ask method with like asking the questions to try and get them engaged for like, is that an approach you use trying?
So it's not about necessarily using the ask method or not using it. The ask method can work whether you're, doing B2C, B2B, can absolutely work regardless of what you're doing. And we've seen it work across industries, across everything. The thing is if I want to get butts and seats, right? This is just me. It's easier for me to sell B2B to one person who gets the butts for me than it is for me to sell B2C. I will tell you that very honestly. So I started to see that, right? If I build these relationships B2B, I can. So I built like a coach fundamental training program. I'm going to teach leaders the fundamentals of coaching. They don't have to be coaches. They don't have to be ICF certified. I'm going to teach them the fundamentals of coaching for performance, right? So I created an internal coaching certification program where they become an ABC company coach, right? And I did a live kickoff where I would come to the company and kick off live, and then I would do 6 months of virtual sessions every other week. And I dripped them skills and they practiced coaching. And my whole big sell was that, hey, your employees are going to get the benefit of these people being in the course because they're going to be coaching the employees. And then I created a little mini practicum, and I had to only sell one person on that, right? And I had to say, okay, it's X amount for up to 25 people, and I could make a 5-figure sale that way. When you are selling B2C, I will be completely honest, it is going to be a little bit more of a grind. You're going to have 15 conversations, right? But it's completely possible when you really know your market. And it's better to have 15 people paying more that you can really service initially, than to have 30 people paying a little bit less that you have to then bring somebody on to service. So
you mentioned that you created your own certificate. So it was an internal certificate, and you said ABC. It was an ABC company. So it was their company.
It was there. It became a badge of honor in the company. Oh, I'm ABC company coach. I'm an ABC coach, right?
Yeah.
They're not an ICF certified coach. They have a certificate in their company that they have taken the coach skill training, right? So it's no official certification with an organization. It becomes a branding, an employer branding thing and a development tool. And it becomes a little bit of a bragging thing. Like, oh, I took the coaching certification that we offer. Like it became an L&D offering, right? And I would customize it to each client and everything like that. But it was one of my most successful products. It still is one of my most successful products. So,
and did you, I imagine you created the curriculum and you knew what to put together in order to give high value to the company.
Absolutely. And honestly, when you're doing skill training, you don't have to go so heavy on curriculum because it's a lot of demonstrating, especially when you're teaching skills. So it's a lot of like, okay, I'm going to demonstrate this active listening now. Now you do it, right? It wasn't a huge heavy lift, right? It's teaching the grow model. Like it's all those kind of like fundamentals, but it's also coaching leaders on why they need to be coaching instead of mentoring and teaching, right? So it's also teaching leaders a little bit about why they should be coaching for performance and why they should be investing in coaching conversations rather than disciplinary conversations.
That's awesome. And do you use a technology like an LMS system, or do you do it via like just when they?
I do it live. I've done it live, and there are some people that you could get the recording, and so I've used Teachable to have the recording. So it is a live delivery because it's very when you're teaching skills, you're practicing. And I always say there's 12 sessions. You have to come to 9 of the 12 live to receive your certificate. And the other ones you can go to the recording for, and that's fine. And then with larger groups of people, what I would do is I would have multiple sessions. So if I had a cohort of 50 leaders in a company, I would offer 2 different times every 2 weeks. So I would have a morning session and an afternoon session on like 2 different days. And you just signed up for the one that you could do. And that's how I went from there.
Yeah. And what did you find was like the tailwinds and the headwinds? Like what did people love about it and they were excited to learn and grow? And then what did you feel like was kind of like the headwinds that was a challenge for them
So,
going?
I would say, people loved it because it was short bursts. I always say, I will never try to sell you a 2-day training, because that will not, you can pay me the same amount of money for 2 days, or you can pay me for 6 months, but that's the same amount of time. And
Mhm.
that's how, when you drip content over time and allow people to practice it, that is how adults learn and grow.
Yeah.
They do not learn and grow by going to a 2-day training is the equivalent of an Instagram scroll. It's an aha, like, oh, that's so interesting. And, blah, 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 and then it's disappears. It disappears. You get nuggets, you meet one person.
Mhm.
You should still go to 2-day trainings. I'm not saying that they are valuable, but for a company to bring in a trainer for 2 days and expect them to learn a skill that they will practice just defies all laws of adult learning. They're not going to retain the information such that they will use it in a regular day-to-day way. So when you take that same amount of time and you put it out over 6 months, it creates an enormous amount of value. So I would say one of the best parts of it was seeing the people in the program see the impact of the coaching they were giving the employees.
Mhm.
And the other thing that was really great at the end was that we had like a mini practicum where you had to pick a coachee at the end, similar to a regular coaching certification. You have to pick a coachee to coach them for 4 sessions. And then the coachee has to evaluate you through an evaluation that I have online. People thought they were being given a gift from the company. They were like, I was chosen for this. Like,
You're like,
that's
that
how
was
they
supposed to be a headwind. That was a tailwind.
I wish I could tell you there was a tailwind. The tailwind is that, like, there's always a bunch of people who get excited and then they drop off and they don't finish. Like, there's always
Yeah.
like 10% of people that just don't do it. Right. But those people, if probably shouldn't be managers in the company anyway. If they're like, they don't have 12 hours over 6 months to invest in their leadership development, then that's I mean, obviously some people have different reasons for dropping off, but it was just, it's just an incredible way to train leaders. And so every session ended with this coaching challenge. Okay, now you're going to have 4 grow conversations this week. Think about your people, like blah, blah, blah. Like, it was like very practical. Like, you're going to have, in these next 2 weeks, you're going to have 4 grow conversations. Okay, think about how you're going to do that. It could be planned, it could be unplanned, like, and they had to come back and share and say what they were doing. And that's the way you teach people a skill.
Well, and I love kind of changing subject, but on the same lines. So I was the corporate girl for the 22 years. Then I went out on my own to start my own coaching practice. I found the transition from being a boss, coaching people, to then a pure play coach. The delta was bigger than I had estimated. So I just felt I was a natural coach because that's all I did. I did a lot of mentor programs and things like that in corporate America, but it's different when you don't physically see the person every day. You really have to take on face value the hour of how they share what's going, because you don't know anything, So that was a pretty unique experience for me. That's taken me, finally to get into the lane of really understanding, embracing that difference. Can you tell me, like, from your point of view, that delta between being a in-house coach, like a boss coach, to an actual pure play coach? What's in your opinion, that difference?
So part of the difference is you don't have to, part of the restraint of a boss coach is that you own that person's results as much as they do, right? So when you don't own the results, it does give you a little bit more freedom. And when you're also not required to toe a company line, it gives you a little bit more freedom, right? There have been people that they have hired me as their coach, and we're talking, and they're a leader in a company, and we're getting into these conversations of, is this the right place for you? And you can get into those conversations as a boss coach, but it creates more conflict, right? For inner conflict for the boss, like, for the boss. So there's a freedom there that you have to capitalize on to allow to almost like up the authenticity of the kinds of conversations and the boundaries you can push. You're kind of wed to some boundaries and policies. And there's just like this area, this like 20% area that you can't go in when you're the boss coach, right?
Yeah.
Because even if you disagree about something about the company, you are the company to that person. So you can't share that with that coachee, right? When you're really, when you're an external coach, you can be straight about some things that you can't when you're the boss. So I would say to just celebrate that and look at how that can be used creatively in contribution to the coachee.
Yeah, that's great. I also love the fact that, you create that safe space, and like you said, that wall isn't there. So you really can go, when the personal goals and the professional goals aren't really in alignment, perception wise, it slows them down from their career. But so often they actually are in line, but they don't honor the conversation to think that they want to at some point retire here. Like they just feel like there's more conflict than there is. But as a individual coach, teaching other coaches on how to hold your clients accountable and being really prepared for sessions was, that was probably my biggest adjustment, because, they could get fired if they weren't prepared for my meetings before. And here they show up as like this, opportunity to kind of explore solutions and things like that. I'm like, you still need to do the pre-work. We still need to be prepared. So that's been fun. But we only have a few minutes left. I'd love to kind of ask just, a couple other questions just about your business in general. Is there a part of when you're doing, whether it's a contract work or whether you're doing your own coaching, what's something kind of helpful for our members to know about your practice and, what you love to do with all the multiple hats you love to wear?
So, I mean, I do, it's, I do love what we do at the Ask Method Company. And so I really, I would, I love that. Part of what I love what we do there is that we really push people out of their comfort zone. Sometimes even with technology and, people have, I do want to address this, and this is something I address everywhere, everything I do. People have a fear of technology that keeps their businesses stuck. And I'm not going to say, like, I don't have that fear, right? And so I understand when you don't have the fear, it feels easier than it is. I've seen people I've seen people into their 80s take on Ask and people who worked in corporate like their whole lives and like figure it out, right? And so I just encourage people, like, and this isn't everything I do, that no matter where you are in life, no matter what stage of life you're in, do not let the fear of technology stop you. Because when we have anger towards technology, it's really a frustration with ourselves. And it's really self-confidence that's coming out. And let me blame it on technology. There has been evil in the world since the beginning of time. Technology did not bring about evil, right? So, I would just, challenge people to really recognize that our fear about technology or our projecting our anger on technology is really an insecurity with ourselves, and that we can really overcome that. And there is so much unlocked potential in our businesses when we really address that. So that's something I always stress in every single thing I do. But especially at Ask, I think we offer people that opportunity to really go beyond their comfort zone and build a business that they never imagined, because they had this block in their mind that they could not figure out certain things. And are things easy? No, I'm not going to tell you that they're easy. Things are hard, because if it was easy, everybody would just be doing this, right? Nobody would go. Everyone's like, great, I want to be my own boss. Awesome, right? It's hard to be your own boss. It's hard to run your own business. It's supposed to be a little hard, right? It's not supposed to be super simple. So I would say that's just something that is just a common thread in everything I do, that I try to really impress upon people, that and to also adopt the entrepreneur mindset, which is everything takes 10 times longer and frankly 10 times more money than you thought it was going to take. So
just like building a house or going on vacation.
Like, if you think it's going to be cheap and quick, you have to no, whoever told you that is lying. But no, it's not going to be cheap and quick. The only thing that's cheap and you can't even get Starbucks cheap and quick, so it's like, it's not cheap and quick. And some people, that's why I always say some people need that mix. Like, I'm a person, I always like to have something else going on just for my own self. So,
well, it's so well said. And that's a great way to end this conversation. We're so appreciate, Stephanie, for you being with us. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, it's the best place, LinkedIn or
LinkedIn is great. I would say absolutely. I do pay attention there. So you can find me. I'm Stephanie Licata on LinkedIn. That's sort of the best place. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, on behalf of my sister, Allison, and me, I want to say thank you everyone for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you another day.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.